What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. In this video, we are jumping into The Punisher, issue number 6. There has been a lot going on, but this is finally getting us to the fight we have been waiting for. The Punisher versus the God of War. After witnessing the Hand's cruelty, Frank Castle attempted to depart with his beloved, only to discover her life force. It wanes once she is outside the fortress walls. Frank is then forced to stay there, ready to release some anger. He goes to confront Ares, the God of War. This is the War of the Gods of War. Now, make sure you guys have subscribed to the channel, make sure you like this video, and with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright gang, so as we dive into issue number 6, we are picked up in the past, when Frank Castle had returned home from boot camp. This is when him and Maria, they decided to get married. She was 8 months pregnant, with Frank Castle preparing to ship off to war. Maria had waited at the train station, waited to see off her beloved. The thing is, Frank Castle was already gone, unable to say his goodbyes. His pregnant wife, she sat there at that train station alone, and Frank Castle was at war. And that is what's going to take us to present day. Frank Castle currently facing off Ares, using one of the banner cannons, a gamma-powered minigun. He is trying to use all the weapons that Ares has been throwing into circulation. Using everything at his disposal, Frank Castle is trying to take down the God of War, but he is left wanting. Ares right now, he is livid, more mad than he has ever been, believing that Frank Castle has turned into a travesty, nothing more than a sliver, a shadow of the man he once was, telling Frank Castle to show me your war face. Show me the greatest machine warfare has ever born. Show me the true Punisher, using a graviton bazooka, which essentially grabs everything within the vicinity and it launches it at Ares. And while Ares taunts him, letting him know that he was baptized in the blood of war, and by war, he will be redeemed, letting Frank know that he was the purest of all his disciples. Knowingly or not, he has always been a pantheon of Ares. And so he has to know, what did the priestess offer you? What have they given you that makes you turn away from who you are? Makes you turn away from the God of War, from being the Punisher? As Frank Castle attempts to use his sword, ninja stars, all of this stuff, Ares lets him know that you are beginning to disgust me. What you are, what you have become. This shell of the Punisher. This is not the man that I imbued with power. This is not the one that I made the slaughterer of men. That you have become nothing more than a pathetic puppet. With Frank Castle just taking one heck of a beating. Ares is not the God of mercy. He is the God of war. And he is going to make Frank suffer for all of his sins, hiding away like a frightened child in his castle, surrounded by idolizers and false prophets, saying that he is no messiah. Whatever lies they tell you, Ares lets him know that he belongs to the God of War, that it was war that made him into the man he is today. Frank Castle bleeding, bruised, and his face swelling up like a freaking grapefruit. He lets Ares know that it wasn't war that made him the man he was. And it sure as hell was not the God of War. As Ares drags his limp and bleeding body, he tries to figure out why it took so long for Frank Castle to come and have this confrontation. Why did he hide away? Because the Punisher, he never hides. The Punisher is relentless, day and night. There is no border. There is no sleep. Hiding behind his walls, behind the ninjas, clinging to the shadows, almost as as if he is protecting something. And this is when Ares figures it out. That is how they got the Punisher to side with them. Ares knows that his family has been resurrected. They gave back what war had taken, the sacrifice that his war demanded. They committed the greatest blasphemy of all, telling his apostles to go to the Hand Citadel, find Frank Castle's family, and bring them to him, because the God of War plans to reclaim the Punisher. By doing so, this will mean the death of Frank Castle's family, that their deaths will free the Punisher. This is where we see the Beast arrive inside of Frank Castle, the red flames growing all around him, burning the nearby apostles. Ares tries to figure out what kind of profane magic this is, telling Frank to look at himself. Look at what you have become. But for Frank Castle, he will do whatever it takes to win the war, to end the God of War. Using the Hellfire and the Dead Man's Dagger, he goes in on Ares, only for Ares to backhand him and send Frank Castle flying. But what Ares did not recognize is that dagger, it landed in his stomach. Frank Castle taking full opportunity. He gets up and he drives that dagger as far into Ares as he possibly can. As he goes in to give the killing blow, Ares lets him know that you were like a son to me. Breaking that dagger in the hand of Frank Castle, he lets him know that this will be the day the Son of God falls, taking his head and smashing it into the ground repeatedly. This is the death of Frank Castle. And while he drifts between the living and dead, he has a memory from back in the war, back in the day when everyone was discussing when they got their first kill. Now Frank Castle, he wasn't preoccupied with the conversation. He was focused on a picture. This picture of was his baby girl, his firstborn child. This is what made Frank Castle the man he is today. That little girl, that small child, was the only thing that drove him, that made him be the killer he is. He knew it was him or them, and he would do anything to get home to his child. He wasn't baptized in war. It wasn't Ares that made him the man he is. It was having that loved one back home, the one he would protect over anything else. And it didn't matter what stood in his way. It didn't matter how many forces were against him. Nothing would stop him from getting home. This is when the Punisher awakens to find himself at the Hand Citadel, returning back from the land of the dead. Frank Castle has been resurrected. The ninjas of the Hand, they found him on the brink of death. They healed up his body, tried to make him as 100% as possible. And while his body still has much healing to do, he is also informed that Ares and his apostles, they never made their way to the castle, which means Maria and the children, they are safe. Now, we have yet to see Frank Castle's children actually resurrected, and we are about to learn why. Asking if it worked this time, she lets it be known that it did not. The priestess letting us know that resurrecting children, it is one of the hardest things to do, especially ones that have been dead for so long. Is what we see is their resurrection has turned them into monstrosities, having multiple arms, at least 10 fingers on one hand, more than 2 eyes. These things are abominations, because every time they try to resurrect the children, it leaves them with less physical material than before. Even the magical elixirs blessed by the beast, this simply isn't enough. Even it has its limitations. To further, all the injections that his wife is having to take to ensure she doesn't turn into some kind of abomination. These are all taking its toll, which means it simply might not be possible for Frank Castle's children to be resurrected. Obviously, he recognizes what needs to be done here, telling everybody to leave the room. He grabs the sword from his hip because he knows these abominations, they need to be put out of their misery. They need to be killed, and they have to start again. And so, killing his children, Frank Castle goes out to the garden, finding himself throwing up, unable to stomach what he has to do. This is when they have a visitor. That visitor is, of course, Daredevil. He comes in asking Frank Castle, what in the God's name do you think you are doing? And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. An absolutely phenomenal issue. You know, for the people that complained that Frank Castle was changed, that they're ruining Frank Castle, they're ruining the Punisher by changing his symbol, I gotta say, if you're not reading this comic, you are truly missing out on such a good story. Because all of this makes sense on why Frank Castle has gone down this path. And every single time, every single issue, we are seeing why this is a bad path for Frank Castle. In fact, the writers, Jason Aaron, he's letting us know that this isn't the Frank Castle, not the one that we know, not the one that the God of War knows. Nobody recognizes him, not even Daredevil. That he is going against everything he is. He is betraying everything that he has stood for, all in the hopes that he will have his family return to him. And this definitely isn't the first time something like this has happened. But a man that has been battling after all of these years, if he can finally have that, finally have his wife and children not have to worry about them being killed or murdered, they are fully protected under the beast, under the hand, why wouldn't he take this opportunity? I guarantee you, if I were in Frank Castle's shoes, I would do exactly the same thing. There would be nothing that stops me from resurrecting my children. But at the end of the day, we are seeing how poorly this is playing out for him. I mean, the God of War pretty much killed Frank Castle. If it had not been for the priestess and the beast, Frank Castle would in fact be dead right now. And so while he finds himself licking his wounds from this last battle, we are finally getting some Daredevil, because they have reformed the fist. They have every intention of taking down the hand, but that is going to be much more difficult now that Frank Castle is their savior, now that he is the hand of the beast, that he has become their messiah. The question remains, will we see a fight between the Punisher and Daredevil, or will Punisher finally see the errors of his way and end up joining Daredevil in taking down the hand? Let me know your thoughts, let me know your theories. If you would like to get caught up on everything going on with Punisher, be sure to check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It will get you completely caught up on everything going on with this series. Now, if you would like to support the channel, you can always do so by joining the channel membership. Much like Patreon, having 5 different tiers from $1 to $50. From loyalty badges to me sending you free comics every month. This will help out the channel in tremendous ways. Now, if you can't do that, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit that notification bell, and with that being said, until the next breakdown.